All set, Jen.
It tells us that.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, welcome everybody to our second Q&A. We want to go through some of the questions that have been coming up. Hopefully, everyone's had a good opportunity to at least see everything, have at least one competition underneath their belt. And thank you, Casey, for sharing that the training that you did was a hit. So that's good to know. And to remind any coaches that may or may not have gone through the training, a lot of questions can be answered by that. Your schools are paying for the training. So please make sure that you go through and do them. Don't just register. It is very valuable, and the videos and stuff are really helpful. So if Andrea and Casey, if you want to go ahead and start, I'll monitor the chat and let you know if there's any further questions in the chat.
So a couple things before we begin. With reps, I have about 28 people that have currently signed up, but they don't have the correct name formatting. So you have to have, if you're from like section 3, it must like spell out 3 and then do a space and then have your name. So I have sent emails to people, but I'm not getting a lot of movement on these. If you can, please get your name adjusted if you don't already, because I can't get you assigned to the course until you actually fix your name formatting. And there's a couple people on there that did register that do have the correct name formatting. I'll get to you this within the next day. I apologize. I was downstate judging this weekend, so I will get caught up on those. Also, in terms of people that are monitoring these, the instructors, when you go into the reports, be aware that people may look like they're 100%, but if they did, let's say they did the game day and safety, and then they haven't logged in since, it looks like they're at 100%. But when you go and click on the view report, you can actually see what modules are actually covered, and it doesn't show all the competitive modules if they haven't logged in yet. Unfortunately, right now, we don't have a way to filter those, but that's why we're using the names with the section number in front for all of the people that are monitoring those to be able to actually go through and see all their section of people all grouped together.
Okay.
And then today, just as some updates, we had for the score sheets, both electronic and paper, we have the indicators added for both stunt difficulty and pyramid difficulty. They're just check boxes. So it just is a way for the judge to let you know that they included each of those 0.5s in your score. So you can see those on the judge's 3-4 tab on the electronic scoring, and then just on the paper score sheets if you're using those. And then Andrea, do you guys have an update from today to clarify the state minimums for like how many people are in a group and all that stuff from your meeting today?
Yeah, we talked about it. Jen, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so there was confusion last time about stunt groups for the different class sizes. A and B is 1. It's a minimum of 12. So a stunt is 4 people. So you must do the stunts that would require the minimum number with the 4 people. C and D, it's stunting is 4 people, and it's during the stunts. It can't be 2. It's got to be using the 4 people, and it's not during the pyramids. It is during the stunting section. You just have to have done it. It doesn't have to be every time, but you have to have done it to get that credit. Is everybody clear on that?
And that requirement is totally separate from your difficulty score. That is just whether or not you're going to lose, get a 3-point deduction or not, if you
Correct.
don't utilize those groups at some point in your routine for stunts.
So if you don't have if you don't have the minimum number, if you don't utilize the minimum number required at one point in your routine, then you would get a 3-point deduction.
Anything else, Andrea, before we begin from your meeting today or anything, or Jen?
No, we did a lot of informational stuff, not dealing with any of this.
Okay, perfect. So our first question is, if you do a back handspring full up, would that count as a release or would it count as a twist? So I'm assuming they're talking about for the variety indicator. So when it comes to the variety indicator, a judge is going to look at a skill, and it can be multiple categories, but they're going to look at all the different skills you did, and they're seeing, can I pull a single category and get 3 different categories from your skills? So if your other skills involve twists, then from this back handspring full up, they're going to want to pull a release, or they could also pull an inversion from that. So back handspring full up is an inversion, a release, and a twist. So there's 3 different categories that could be pulled, but they need to pull just one from that, and then look at your other skills, see what categories they can pull from that. If they can pull 3 different categories, you got the variety indicator. Anything
So
to add there,
a question just came in. It's like still 3 skills for partner stunts. What we have to remind you is all skills count. It's not just your top 3. It's not 3. All skills count. So if you only do 3, those are the 3 that are going to count. If you do 3, 4, 5, all of those skills count for the judges to be able to give you a score.
And if they're referencing the indicators for that, for the pace and variety indicator, the judges can only look at skills where you had multiple groups performing the skills. So that just means more than one.
Right.
Next question, clarification. If I have 12 athletes and only perform 2 identical individual stunt groups in the routine, will that decrease the team's possibility for a max score in that section for those stunts? So if you have 12 athletes, then you have the ability to do 3 stunt groups.
Correct.
So that one, if you're only ever going to use 2, couple things here. One, if you're in class A or B, you're going to get hit with your 3-point deduction for not, and that's if your section is using that. Not all sections are. And then 2, you're not hitting your max participation because you have to have 3 skills in which you used all 3 of your groups. And then you're also going to be affected in your 0 to 8.5 score as well. And that can also play a role in your overall score as well. Anything to add there, Andrea?
Can you just clarify, in case you said 3 skills? I don't think, did you mean to say 3 skills?
So in order to get the max participation driver, you have to do max groups for 3 skills.
Okay, I just want to make sure that was right. Okay.
Just checking the rest of this, see if there's anything more. Okay, and so then there's a second part of that question that is asking about if 3 groups would be utilized in the pyramid portion. Oh, maybe that's not. Just trying to, it's a long question. We'll address the pyramid part in a different section. So where are the videos showing the difference between callback and performance style cheers? We are working on these right now. Medea's trying to get this done this week, and then I am trying to get them loaded onto RefReps by the end of December. It might be the first week in January. But what we're looking at is 3 different videos. One will be an example of teams that are doing a mixed style, and she will hopefully give some feedback as to why that's not effective and what they could do to correct it so that it's just a straight performance style cheer or a straight callback cheer. And then we'll have 2 video examples where we're actually going to put a performance style against a callback style. In one of them, you'll see that the performance style will come in first. And then in the other example, you'll see the callback style will come in first, so that everyone can see that you can do well in either one of those. It all depends on what you do in your cheer and how you're hitting all the indicators for each of the scoring elements. Anything there, Andrea?
Nope.
Okay. For the variety driver, does a half around release skill, prep to extension release with a half twist, or a half around lib count as a twisting skill? or does it need to be a full twist? So a half twist does count. It's going to count towards your variety driver, but obviously when you're comparing a half twist to a full twist, you're going to have an effect in your 0 to 8.5 score. For the variety driver, do dismounts count towards the 3 skills required? So dismounts do not count towards your variety driver. However, we want to clarify because a lot of people say that certain skills are dismounts in cheerleading, but if you look at the NFHS definition, a dismount only occurs when a flyer is released either to a cradle, so they are released from everyone on the performance surface into a cradle, or you're released to the performance surface. So a skill like a rewind, flyer comes down and usually either 2 feet are still in the base's hands, so it was not a dismount because they did not release to the performance surface, or one foot is still in the base's hand. So either way, a rewind is not going to be considered a dismount. The dismount would happen when the flyer is then set to the ground. So that is not going to count towards any sort of variety driver. Andrea, anything else there?
No, that's everything. And that touches on that other question too, if you want to.
So let's see. For the variety driver, how many stunt groups need to perform the skills? So we did talk about this. Variety driver and pace driver, it's just more than one group. So if you just have one group performing a skill, that skill cannot count towards pace and it can't count towards variety.
So there's two, going back a question. What about a twisting Baja that's on the progression sheet as a skill, but it catches at a cradle?
So a twisting Baja does not release. You're going to still be in contact with somebody on the performance surface. So it's not a release. That would be a transitional skill or an inversion skill. It's not a dismount.
Correct.
And then is a back walkover from a cradle considered a dismount?
They are releasing to the performance surface. I do want to double check with Medea on that one. Andrew, any thoughts there?
My
Well,
guess
I mean, my guess would be, yeah, because they went to a cradle. It would depend on how they got to the cradle, I guess. Because the cradle is a dismount and then they're back walkovering out. That's a transitioning out to the dismount.
Yeah, let's touch base with her on that one. We'll save that for if she's able to jump on. Jen, can you make note of that one?
Yep.
Thank you. Let's see. It was stated that credit for the pace driver is based on multiple groups performing a consistent quick pace. Does this mean a level considered full team majority or something else? So we did address this part a couple times. It's just multiple groups, so more than one group to get your pace driver. And then, so they had the same question for the variety driver, so we covered that. While we're on that topic, I do actually have 2 pace videos that we are going to add to the course. And I wanted to see let me see if I got this to go through. So I was transferring it from this weekend. So this is not a New York State team. Do I have the ability to share screen, Jen?
Todd would have to give you.
Yeah, hold on. Give me 1 second.
Thank you. Let's see.
You're all set.
Okay. So, in the video, Medea explains that you achieve pace by connecting skills. But we had a really good example come up this weekend with a team that
we don't see your screen. No, now we do.
Yeah, sorry, I was just getting to it. So
Okay.
With this team, they're doing a pyramid, but what you'll notice is that in each of their skills, there's a double bounce in between. That double bounce is separating those skills, and so they're not going to achieve the pace driver in this. Okay, double bounce. So they're separating each of those skills. So this would not achieve the pace driver. Another example from the same team. So this is with stunts. So what you're going to notice here is that there's a huge pause in between each of their skills. So there may be moments when they are doing more than one skill while they're in the air, but when you're talking about a major pause in between those skills, that's also separating those skills. So just wanted to give just quick examples of what may or may not be pace driver. We are going to try to come up with some more examples and add those to the course as well to help clarify that, because it is something that we do need to develop understanding of. All good, Jen? Any questions so far?
Nope, we're good.
Medea said that a back walkover from a cradle would be an inversion out of a stunt.
So that could count towards the variety driver.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you for texting her. Okay, next one.
I just got a question.
Go for it.
Team requires 3 stunts. If you have 2 stunts doing the same thing in sync and one other group doing a different skill, does it have to be in sync or can it be rippled? Will that hide the driver? Will that hit the drivers?
Those can be rippled, right, Andrea?
Yeah.
Even if 2 are in sync and 1 is not?
Team requires 3 stunts. If you have 2 stunts doing the same thing in sync.
So all 3 are doing the same skill, but you're
They're
just
doing-
having one of the groups do it like on a ripple, right?
There's 3 groups, 2 do it at the same time, 1 does not.
But all 3 are still doing the same skill.
Same skill.
It says one group is doing a different skill.
Yes, 1 is doing a different skill.
Okay, so if one is doing a different skill, then that's not going to count towards their max indicator for or max participation.
Right.
But if they were all doing the same skill and you had 2 perform it at the same time and then one comes right up after that and it's a ripple, that is okay to count towards your max.
Next question says, so is a regular Baja considered a dismount?
Nope, because they don't release. The flyer is always going to be in contact with someone on the performance surface. So it goes to a cradle, but it doesn't have the release element.
Got it. When talking about the pace driver, could you be at jeopardy at not getting credit for the stunt if done too quickly?
I'm kind of wondering if what they're asking is if they're doing it too quickly, and Andrea, maybe you'll have to help me out with this, that they don't actually hit the skill. Like you're kind of shooting from one thing to the next. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I'm not totally sure what the question's asking.
Yeah, I don't know what they mean by done too quickly. Like, they have to hit the skill. I mean, it has to be a clear skill that they're hitting before they move on to the next.
Mm-hmm. Does that answer your question?
Maybe they can elaborate more on an example of what
Yeah.
they mean.
Okay, keep going and hopefully.
So this one we pretty much answered. Am I correct in assuming that a twisting dismount to cradle would be considered a spinning skill? No, it would not, because dismounts do not count towards that. They also asked about the half up to prep or half twist to cradle would count for variety purposes. Yes, it will. I'm sorry, half up to prep would. Half twist to cradle would, well, you can't half twist to cradle. You would actually have to do you'd have to be connected. So that's not a dismount. So that could count towards it. So half twisting where you are connected to a person on the performance surface to prone is really what that is. Am I reading that right, Andrew? Does that sound right to you?
Yep. Sorry, I'm on mute.
No, you're fine. Is there a preference or weight when choosing performance versus callback style? So there is no weight between the two. You can be successful in both. And those examples that we're going to try to get out by the end of the month will help you to understand that. We have had teams that have done a combination of the two. And it was really truly a performance style cheer and they had a lot of great elements in it. But what ruins it is if they ask for a callback. When you ask for a callback, you have to go to a much slower style cheer. And so it's that mixing of the two styles that throws you off in several of the categories. And Medea will go through and explain that in those examples. Anything to add there, Andrea?
No, but Casey, I think some people are getting confused with the dismount. What's considered like a dismount with the whole release, because basket tosses, I think all that stuff's going to come into play now. What's considered a dismount with the definition that you gave through the NFHS.
Yeah. So a toss is defined as you have to end in a cradle. So that's separate. The toss itself and the skill that you're doing is the actual skill. It's not about the actual, like cradling. I don't know, you want to give any other examples, Andrea, and like things that would be considered or not considered a dismount, or does anyone have any specific skills they want to throw out there and ask, is this a dismount or not?
There's one in the,
there's two in the chat here now. So a 360 prone is not considered a dismount then because there is someone holding ankles when caught, no release.
Correct. Yes.
So then the next one says you could half twist to cradle by switching spotters, and then that would be a dismount, correct?
Trying to picture that. Yeah. Andrea, you get what they're saying? Like, so you're half twisting in the air, but I think you're not talking about actually doing a twist down. You're talking about rotating in the air. Is that what you're saying?
A half twist to cradle by switching spotters, and then you would be dismount. Yeah. Is that what they mean? Is that what you mean, what Casey just said?
If someone's asking that question, they can always just unmute if we need further clarification.
Yeah.
So Gay, you asked that question.
Okay, so I'm unmuted. You could have a front spot and the flyer could release to a cradle and the front spot becomes the back spot for the cradle.
Okay, so yeah, that would be a dismount.
Right. Okay, but thank you.
It has both those elements of they are releasing the flyer from everyone on the performance surface and they are going to a cradle. Thanks, Gay. Any other specific skills, Jen?
So then back to the 360 prone, the 360 prone would count as a skill and hit the variety driver.
Correct, yes.
Because they're still holding the ankles and there is no release.
Yes. And keep in mind too, when you may be hitting the variety drivers, but how you're hitting that stuff is also going to play a role in your 0 to 8.5 score. So the judges are going to take everything into account, everything you did in order to come up with your score of 0 to 8.5, and then just add in those drivers after that. Any others in there, Jen?
No.
Okay. Okay, so this was a good question. It's kind of long, so I'll try to go slow on this. Am I correct to give a variety credit as follows for the pyramid below? So the first skill is shoulder inversion, release to extended to target with one bracer. They sponge down, then they do a switch up to single base lib with one bracer. Then they tick-tock to a hitch single based. So when I look at those three skills, the first one, shoulder inversion, release to extended. So that's an inversion and a release. Then the second skill is switch up to single base liberty. So switch up is going to be a release and it's single based. Then the third one, tick-tock to hitch, single-based, is a release with single-based. So from those three, I can pull a combination of inversion, single base, and release. So I get the variety indicator. However, when you look at those skills, you see that two of them are just releases to single base. So they're the same skills. That's going to be taken into account in your 0 to 8.5. So doing some of the same skills and having very little while you're getting the variety indicator by pulling different elements, there wasn't a whole lot of actual variety in the skills you're choosing to do. There was a lot of similarities that can bring down your 0 to 8.5 score. So it's something you want to think about, and how you're achieving these indicators affects that 0 to 8.5. Okay, a team of 10 executes 2 different basket tosses at the same time. Does the team receive credit for executing a toss by multiple groups for variety purposes? So Medea did say that tosses are a little bit different. They don't have to be the same to hit that variety indicator. The fact that multiple groups did tosses, they can get the variety indicator if they have now 2 other types of skills. However, doing 2 different basket tosses, again, is going to affect your 0 to 8.5 score, as opposed to when you have multiple groups performing the same skill. Anything more to add to that, Andrea?
Nope, that's correct.
Okay. Does a brace flip in a pyramid constitute an inversion for variety purposes? Yes, brace flips are just going to be inversions. If a team has 2 separate sets of jumps in 2 different parts of the routine, actually, before we go on from that, Andrea, do we want to take a minute to talk about the max participation with pyramids?
Yeah, I believe there was a question about that. So yeah, Casey, if you want to go into what we discussed earlier.
So this did come up with the judges as well. And so also we want to elaborate a little bit more on what Medea said in there, just to make sure that everyone's clear. So when you're thinking about the max participation for pyramids, it's still the same expectation as if it were stunts. So what that means is you still have to have 3 skills somewhere in your pyramid where all your groups are involved. Now, involved just means they're involved and connected in the pyramid or will be connected at some point. So it doesn't matter whether they are performing the skill or they're a bracer, but you have to have 3 at some point. So for example, if I have a team of 12, they can do 3 groups. So that pyramid, you would need to do skills where 3 groups are involved. And that could be 2 bracers on the outside performing, 1 person performing in the center, or maybe it's the center bracer and the outsides are performing. Again, though, how you achieve that is going to affect your 0 to 8.5. Then also I want to do an example of 5 groups. So let's say we have a team of 20 and you have 5 groups. At some point, all 5 groups are going to have to be involved. So there's multiple ways that you could do that. You can have outsides connected to bracers, and then you've got like the inside person in the center doing skills. Or you could have the outside people and the center being bracers, and then the 2 on the left and right of center performing skills and being double braced. So there's multiple ways to achieve that. But let's also within that talk about, what if you at some point with 5 groups, you have 2 separate pyramids where obviously you're going to have single braced. So you have 4 groups involved, and then you have an extra group. So that's the time when it's not going to count towards your max participation skills, but all the skills you're doing there, are going to count towards your 0 to 8.5. So there's value in doing that. But what there's also value in doing is doing something with that center group. Now, if you, for example, have that center group do a toss, that's going to count towards your stunt difficulty and stunt execution. But Andrew, you want to give the example you talked about earlier of like, let's say you do that toss with that center group, and then how do you incorporate that back into the pyramid of 5?
If you were using that toss group to become maybe the middle bracer, so once they toss and then you reload and they do a show and go, and now they're in the middle of the stunt as a bracer. So that's like you're utilizing the momentum from the toss to do a transition now to make it look like a more interactive pyramid.
And the reason why I wanted her to give that example is that we really want to emphasize, do not forget about creative ins and outs, because it's going to affect your overall score. Medea and I were down state this weekend, so we got to see a lot of teams perform, and they're doing really well with their difficulty, but some teams are not really thinking about the value of the creative ins and outs. So like when you're getting into your pyramid, don't just put your bracers up in preps. You could do a show and go before that. You can do very basic skills with all of your skills and in how you get in them, whether it's very basic inversions or basic half twists or anything like that. Anything you can do with basic skills for how you get into stunts or pyramids and how you get out of stunts and pyramids with all of your groups, that's going to play a really big role in that 5-point overall score for judges 3-4. So don't forget about that this year. It's probably going to play a bigger role than you realize. There's value in having those creative ins and outs. Anything else with that, Andrea, or anything you want to adjust what I said?
No.
Oh, good. Okay. Jen,
So
how we doing on questions?
I have, I think they're asking the same question, but we'll see. To confirm, a braced flip is its own driver if a team does that plus invert and twisting, or is a flip not its own driver and only considered an invert per your comment?
It is only considered an inversion. So in terms of a category, flips are not its own category. A flip is just an inversion.
Okay.
I think we have to remember too, like a braced flip is a type of a released inversion. A braced roll is a connected inversion. Just because it's a pyramid doesn't change the qualifying skills.
So actually, that's a really good point, Andrea. So Jen, when we say a brace flip is an inversion, well, actually, when you think about it, it's a release, like Andrea just said, and you can have twisting in a flip. So there's different categories that you can add into that, not just being an inversion.
Okay.
So really good point, Andrea.
So then the next one says, I think I'm asking the same question as above, but if a team does a braced flip plus a true inversion plus a release, can you get the pyramid variety driver or no, because you are treating the flip as an inversion?
So flip is an inversion and a release if they didn't twist. What was the second skill? Is just an inversion with a release?
If a team does a braced flip plus a true inversion plus a release.
So the only categories I'm hearing there are inversion and release. So I can't find a third. So you would not get the variety driver from just those skills.
Okay. If the brace flip is caught with minimal bases.
So now that's another category, is minimal bases. So that's another way to get another category into your variety. So if we took that previous example, but said that the brace flip went to a single base. So now it's that flip is an inversion, a release, and a single base. So I can pull single base from that. I can pull inversion from the other skill they did. And then I can pull release from the third skill that they did. So now I have the variety driver.
Anyone else want to throw something into that scenario?
These are good questions. I hope it clarifies.
I don't have anything else. Do you have anything else on the list?
We do, yes. Let me see where we left off. Okay, so we're getting to the jumps, right, Andrea? That's where we left off.
Yeah, the jumps.
Okay,
I think this is a question about the two different ones, right?
Yeah. So if a team has two separate sets of jumps, So as in two different parts of their routine. One set has two different jumps that are connected in the sequence. The second set, well, it says, does the second set of jumps still have to have two different jumps to qualify for the jump score? No. So at some point in the routine, you have to have two jumps that are different and are connected. That's going to meet the requirement of not getting a 0. And then later in the routine, if you do another jump, like if you do a single jump, it's just going to count towards your execution of your overall jumps. And so judges are going to look at both of those. Anything else you want to add in there, Andrea?
No.
Okay. Does recycled tumbling count towards the number of participants? Andrea, you want to touch on this one just because it's not my area of expertise.
I was gonna have you touch on it. You have to remember, with the tumbling again, tumbling seems, we always go back to tumbling, but if you're recycling tumblers, it's not adding to your overall, like it's not adding to your overall difficulty score. It's not gonna like make a huge change, I guess I'm trying to say. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Casey,
you're maybe talking about like a 1/10 of a point, right?
Yeah. If you're recycling the same tumblers.
So like in this, it says, for example, if there are 10 on the mat and there are only 4 tumblers, could 2 of those tumblers perform additional passes? So you can, but what they're going to look at to drive your score is what was the most amount of tumblers and what did they do? So like, that's how they're going to look for where you're going to start. As you do just maybe 2 people doing additional passes, you're talking about just adding maybe a 1/10 or 2 to that difficulty score, basically.
But they'll still be judged on execution. That's just
Correct.
a reminder that they'll still be judged on that.
That's a good point too.
The question that just flew on the board as you guys were talking about jumps. For the first time ever, I'm considering not doing full team jumps. Will our jump score really start at 4.8 or 4.9?
So that's basically a ratio. So, you know, if I'm talking about a team of, let's say I have a team of 8 and I choose to not have one person jump, that's a much bigger effect than if I have a team of 20 and I choose to make one person not jump. So the team of 20 that has one person not jump, you're probably looking at a start score of 4.9. If I'm on a much smaller team, Andrea, I'm thinking maybe like 4.7, 4.6, or maybe even lower when you have one person not jump on a team of 10.
Yeah, it'll be lower. Yep.
Okay. So it's all based on a ratio, basically. Any others there, Jen?
Nope.
Okay. Let's see. That one we already answered. Okay. There is no mention about front spotters. If you have a front spot on only 1 out of 3 groups in the air, will that take you out of majority or drop your skill a bracket from elite to advanced like in previous years? So this year, throw all of that idea out of the window. Judges are just going to look at everything you did. So,
Yes.
you know, they're going to look at your total number of skills. They're going to look at the difficulty of all those skills. And when they look at that and they say, okay, let's say three groups was your full team. So they had full team skills, but one of them was using a front spot. That makes that skill easier. So it's comparative. So the question then becomes, what did other teams do? If you have, let's say we had that team and we had another team that was the same exact thing. So they had 3 groups. They did the same exact skills as our other team that used a front spot. The team that didn't use the front spot is going to score a little bit higher because they didn't use fronts. So it's all a comparison thing. You have to look at everything that they did and compare those elements. So that's why, like, we have to focus on the idea that it's a ranking. It is not, I earned this specific score. That's not what we're doing anymore. Anything to add there, Andrea?
Nope, that was perfect.
Okay, cool. With comparative scoring, it's stated that judges can go back and edit a score if they see a change needed in a category based on the first team's score, and the team that followed may suggest a needed change. At what point do the scores become final and or locked? So this is a good question. Medea has a really good answer for this that she gave the other night. So let me kind of summarize what she was saying. So when a team goes first, the judges basically are setting the score for each category. And so then that's going to then set where their ranking is. So let's say if I was looking at the jump score, we'll just do something simple. So if I gave the first team, let's say I gave them a 3. And then the next team comes out and they have worse execution. That's going to be lower. So that's why the specific scores don't really matter. It's a ranking. However, when we look at things like, let's say stunt difficulty, there is still a difference in like how spread out those teams should be. So if my first team goes and let's say they did do really difficult skills and they got all the drivers and they ended up at like a 9.7. Okay. But then the next team comes out and I realize that they did even harder skills, and they did harder skills in such a manner that they really need to be separated by more than 0.3. This is that case where a judge might need to change an individual score and adjust it so that their scores for the day can actually reflect the correct comparative scoring. So it's okay when you see like an individual score change here or there. There's also situations where, like with electronic scoring, the judges may have put something in a wrong spot and so they need to fix it. But we're talking about like individual scores changing. What we should not see though is all of the scores across the board changing. There really isn't any reason for that to occur. In terms of when do they become locked? So there isn't really a locking of the scores until a division is completed. And then usually a head judge will ask, has everyone reviewed their comparative scoring rankings for each column? The important piece here is that the judges should never be looking at the results, meaning the final results and the placements. It does not matter to them. What they should only ever be looking at is their score sheet. So if I'm judge 1-2, I can only look at my scores for judge 1-2 because I need those scores in order to correctly compare different teams. But they cannot look at those final rankings until they are done and everything is finalized. And that was really emphasized in the course a lot. And Andrea, is there anything more you want to add to that? This is like it's difficult to explain this. Medea is so much better at it.
Also too, just a reminder that with the electronic score sheets, it's all documented. Because you kind of touched on, they shouldn't be changing multiple times. It shouldn't be like every category shouldn't be changing. And it's all documented. So like that's just another reminder of it.
And judges also, while they're doing this, when they're using electronic scoring, they always keep a paper score sheet of all of their scores. And when they're done with the division, they may go back and realize, oh, I put in a 3.6 when I meant to type in, 6.3. And that does happen. So, they may go through and fix something at the end because it doesn't match what's on their paper score sheet as well, or their paper tracking sheet.
We would call that a clerical error, not a
right,
judging.
not a judging error. It's
a clerical error.
Correct. But either way, anything that's done on there is a way when you look at the electronic score sheet to see what was edited and by what person. And that's why it's important for when competition directors share those score sheets to share them with individual judges, because then they have to sign into their Google account and then you can see who actually made the edits and what cells were edited, basically. Let's see. So we have an example. They're asking, does it get the full team driver? So it's a team of 16. They do 2 inversions to extension while 2 doing inversions to prep. Then do 2 releases to extended. So actually, before I go on to that, so the first skill that they did, 2 of them were to prep and 2 of them were to extended. That's not the same skill being done by all groups. So that's not counting towards your max driver, but it's going to count towards your 0 to 8.5. 2 do releases to extended 1 leg while doing 2 more releases to extended 2-leg. Again, you're doing 2 different skills with 2 groups doing 1 leg, the other 2 groups doing double legs. So that skill, again, is not counting towards your max participation. The last one, 2 double skill baskets, while the third basket does a skill with a twist. Same situation. So all 3 of these examples do not hit the max participation indicator. Am I interpreting anything wrong there, Andrea?
Nope.
Okay. It's a good question. All right. For difficulty with 15, trying to understand what will count for assumed skills here are some examples. If you have 2 round off released to extended and 1 round off release to prep, is it assumed? Okay, so this is kind of the same question we just had. So those are 2 different skills. Now for difficulty though, Andrea, are you getting that this is asking about indicators or just difficulty?
I thought it was just difficulty the way I interpreted it.
Okay, so really just whatever they did, you know, you're talking about you have 2 doing the round off release to extended, 1's round off release to prep. You're not making any assumptions. Judges are just looking at it and saying, this is exactly what I saw. This hits here, this hits here. We had this many groups perform that skill, this many groups perform this skill, and they're creating a ranking when they look at the whole picture of everything that you did. With that, Andrew, with the rest of that, do you think it's worth going through the rest of that question? Or is that kind of like hit on it?
That hits on it.
Okay. Jen, do you have any more questions? That's the last one we have on here.
Okay, I'm answering a question, or I'm attempting to.
Jen, I believe Shelley, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Shelley's talking about 16 and under versus 17 and up as far as athletes, small, large, not small schools, large schools. She's talking about the number of athletes.
So I'm reading, why did we move from small teams versus large teams? Is size is actually wavering scores given? I'm not quite sure.
I think, and again, Shelley, if I'm wrong, I think she's asking, we had D1, D2, large, small.
Oh,
co-ed. So the 5 categories, and now we're at class A, B, C, D with minimum to maximum amount and then co-ed. I think that's what she's asking. Why did we move? All
right. So then my typing answer I just deleted was that answer is longer than what I could possibly type in this box. That was a direction that we ended up going through a discussion about 1.5 years ago, almost 2 years. It was a concern brought up by one section, and then it became a discussion at the executive committee to how best look at the competitions. And it went from those 5 classifications to A, B, C, D, because it felt that the middle of the road size schools were the ones that were being advantaged based on that division. So the suggestion was to go to the 4 plain classifications and require the right number of, or the similar number of sizes to make similar size schools competitive with each other as far as your overall beds numbers and then the number of kids on the mat, if that makes sense. Did I explain that well enough, Todd?
Yeah, I just think that our sections and our membership, you know, felt like
dictated us to change.
Well, and they just felt like the smaller schools were not getting an opportunity to really compete for a state championship like they do in other sports. So I think there was only one team that was smaller than a Class A that had ever won a state championship in the other classifications that we had. So I just feel like there was a push to move to that, and then that's why the change was made.
So the response to Kathy, the reasoning isn't the same for all sections. the guidelines that came out were for the state tournament. It is up to each individual sections to decide whether they want to require it during the regular season. But once it becomes postseason and onto the state tournament, those are the guidelines that must be followed. I'm going back to a flip. Can we go back to the flip in a pyramid? It is a category on the progressions. How is this not considered a flip if you do the braced flip in a pyramid?
So the categories that are being used for variety are listed in the course. The only reason why a braced flip is listed as a separate category on the chart is because there are so many there was a bunch of like things you have to take into account in terms of whether it's single or double braced, where it starts, and what they're doing with that flip. So we had to keep it as a separate category just because not everyone understands the progression there. Andrea, I don't know if you want to add anything more to that too.
No, that's pretty much it.
Okay. So basically we had the 5 categories listed out in the course.
I don't have anything else.
Trying to think if there was anything else. Oh, so to help clarify some of the tumbling, Medea is trying to work on some examples where she'll compare 3 teams and explain like how a judge would come up with the score for that. So hopefully we'll have that by the end of December, beginning of January as well.
Andrea, read that.
There's 2 that came in. When we get electronic score sheets back, will we see edits?
I don't
I'm
think
not.
so.
I don't know. Casey, do you know if everybody?
I don't think so. When we post the finals, we just post the finals. We don't see the edits.
Because I think when you post scores, you should only ever share a view only version of the score sheet. So I don't think you can see those. I think there were some more questions that came up in there, right?
The flip.
So a flip is an inversion and a release, and it could be a twist. If you add a twist into your flip, it all depends on what you're doing for that flip. It can fall into several categories. It could also fall into single base if you land single base on that flip. So it's kind of like the idea of like, if I do a round off back handspring release full up, that hits a lot of different categories. And so a flip can do the same thing with that round off. Sorry, let me just not say round off. Let's say back handspring release to extended and a full up with that. So you're talking about an inversion, you're talking about a release, and you're talking about twisting. And a flip can do the same thing. It all depends on what you're doing with your flip. But bare minimum, a flip is an inversion and it's a release.
And depending what else you put in your pyramid is where they can count it to help you get the driver, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah.
Thanks. You're welcome.
Thanks, any other questions?
I don't. Wait.
This one.
These. Okay. Will we be educated on a judge's perspective of scoring 2 separate teams, both same size, 4 stunt groups each? Team A performs 3 4 inversions to extended perfectly, did not use 4th group on this scale, and Team B performs 4 out of 4 inversions to prep perfectly.
So what we'd like to do, and obviously like this is a really busy time of year, so it's hard to ask Medea to do more. But what we would like to do, and if we can't add it this year, we will add it for next year into the course. We want to get more examples in the example plays in the course where she does actually take different teams and explains this is how a judge would actually look at this series of skills and how they would compare them then to this other team. So, you know, we would have like team A, team B, team C, and she can actually explain how they would rank those, what are the things they're looking for, and go through how to actually score it. It's just the time crunch we're on. We're trying to get through as much as we can. Bare minimum, I want to get up those cheer things, the tumbling, and the pace indicators, but if we can do more, we will try to. If you have 13 girls and use one as a front in a stunt, so everyone is participating, this counts against you possibly. What is it better to use? Okay, so with 13, you don't have to use that extra person if you don't need to. Your max participation on a team of 13 is 3 stunt groups. So anytime you're thinking about max participation, just think about how many groups of 4 can you make? And then if it's tosses, you know, it's going to go down because you're going to use fronts on those. So that's basically what you need to ask. And we're always basing it off of groups of 4. So if you choose to then pull out some people and do single base skills, then your number for max participation doesn't go up. So if I'm doing single base skills on a team of 13, I still only need 3 of them to hit my max participation. However, if I choose to do more when I pull them out and I create another group, that can affect my 0 to 8.5 score when being compared to other teams. Does that help, Kathy? A little. Andrea, anything more to add to that? Or Kathy, do you have anything more you want me to clarify with that? So like if you need to use that person, like if you have a weak group and you need to use them as a front, then by all means use them as a front. You know, it is going to affect your 0 to 8.5, but if you don't need to use them, you can use them for tumbling and get some points in that, because, you know, that's going to help your overall score as well.
In other words, you don't have to just throw them in somewhere to make it look like you're using them for that. You can use something positively with that person to gain points in a different category.
Correct. Is that better, Kathy? Okay, thank you.
There you go.
Any other questions? Okay, so we'll hit max participation driver with 10 girls on the mat for a pyramid with 2 4-person groups and 3 stunt groups with 1 4-person and 2 single base groups. Yes, you have to do 3 skills, but yes. Because if you have 10, you're only expected to do 2 groups involved in that pyramid. And then if you can do more by doing those single base, that's going to help to boost your 0 to 8.5. If a team of 10 utilizes the 2 extra people in a pyramid section by connecting a hitch shoulder sit, will that affect scoring? That can help boost your score a little bit because you're utilizing more. It all depends on comparatively what other teams are doing as well. Andrew, anything to add to that? Did I say that correct?
No, that's right. Yeah, because now you're utilizing everybody on the team.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Taylor. Any others?
Okay, we're at the hour.
There's someone connecting to audio. Oh, never mind. I thought we had a question coming up. Is there anyone that you're using something where you're not able to type in and you have a verbal question to ask?
Should I unmute?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I'm not on the Zoom, I'm on the phone, so I couldn't type anything in. I'm just confused with like the assumed skill thing. Because I thought from the training last week, they were kind of saying that, you know, if you have one team who can do a higher level skill, that's kind of the same skill, like, you know, the inversion to extended versus props. But it sounds like you're going to actually lose points for doing that higher level skill because you're not going to get the majority driver.
So what they were saying is that you can still, by doing that extra skill, that's going to affect your 0 to 8.5. So that's going to help you positively. When you're looking at the picture, the big picture though, you just won't be able to get the max driver with that skill, but you can get it with other skills. So the max participation driver is just any skills that you're using to do with your maximum number of groups is going to hit towards that, and you have to do 3 of them. So the extra skill that you just mentioned, that would just be basically icing on the cake. That's going to help with your 0 to 8.5 score. Andrea, anything to add to that too?
Nope. You have another flip inversion question.
Okay. If a flip is an inversion, does it not count towards variety driver if you use both a skill from the flip category and an inversion from that category? So, this is going to depend on what those skills are. So if you're just talking about just a basic flip, which is a inversion and a release, then you do an inversion and it's just an inversion, you only did a flip and release. You need something else. But let's say your inversion is a spinning inversion. Now you've got, well, we have to have a third skill anyway, first of all, just to mention that, but you have to be able to pull different categories from 3 different skills in order to get your variety driver. Does that help, Ashley?
Okay,
Anyone else?
Okay.
I'm gonna stop the recording now just to let everybody know that